Shalom everybody, and welcome back to this week's Torah study. In this week's Torah portion, Vayet Hanan, Moses, our prophet, our rabbi, is begging and pleading for God to allow him to enter the land of Israel. Of course, God already decreed that he would not, but he's hoping to reverse that decision through appealing to God's mercy. But what's interesting is God not only says stop, he doesn't say stop, he says it's enough. It's enough. Do not ask for this ever again. And what God does instead is he brings Moshe up to the mountain. Moshe ascends the mountain, and he's given a vision to look in 4 different directions. After that, Moses never again asks God, and he seems to be content after that. He seems to be okay. We don't see anywhere in the Torah where the begging and pleading continues. But to understand what's really going on, what we're interested in is what did God show Moses on top of that mountain exactly that changed everything for Moses? And how could this give us some kind of personal application to when life says no to us? There are many times where we feel that our life is not complete without A, B, C. It could be marriage, finding my soulmate. It could be children. It could be wealth. It could be or just financial security. It could be issues with health. There's mental health, physical health. There are certain fundamental aspects of life that we do not feel complete without that missing piece. And so how do we deal with that kind of answer when the universe says no? If you remember, in the desert, Moses created a tabernacle. And this tabernacle is it's portable and it's temporary. It has the poles so that it is carried through the 40 years of wandering. Okay? In the tabernacle, if anyone wanted some background, we have the, the Luchot HaBrit, the 10 Commandments, the original, okay? And what the grand master plan is to build a permanent home for this Mishkan, for this tabernacle, somewhere on a mountain in Jerusalem, right, on Temple Mount. And when that permanent home, that temple is created, so the tabernacle now has a home in the Holy of Holies, and the larger plan is that when that Mishkan rests in its final home, which Moshe wanted to be responsible for doing, when that happens, then heaven and earth are connected and united as one. That means the higher spiritual worlds and the everyday physical reality become one experience. All the filters and layers that disconnect us from our highest point of consciousness is now removed, and we become a more enlightened people. That's the Messianic age. And the Messiah simply means, in the Jewish tradition, the one chosen or anointed to do that task for the nation. In this case, it was Moses. It's only an obvious and reasonable request he would have for entering the land, is to connect heaven and earth. So now the question is, why did God still insist on Moses, do not ask me that again. Stop begging me. The answer is no. The reason why God said no has nothing to do with Moses himself, but it has everything to do with his generation. Imagine being that generation, that designated chosen generation that would initiate one of the greatest cosmic shifts that the planet would ever experience, where heaven and earth would literally become one. Now, what if that generation was not ready? What if that generation was not on the level? What if that generation was not developmentally capable of giving such a very noble, profound task? See, what the Orach Chaim was explaining in the commentary, that we know that later in history, a temple was constructed. The idea came from King David, and later his son Solomon was the one to build the temple, the Beit HaMikdash HaRishon, temple number 1. And we also know that it was destroyed. It didn't last very long. And what was destroyed exactly? The temple. The temple was destroyed. And the Or HaChaim says that's the point. That is the point, is that if it were Moses and not Solomon, if it was Moses to build the temple, it would be indestructible. If something built by the hands of Moses could not be destroyed, and so God would have only one other option, and that is to destroy the people, not the temple. So just to sidetrack for a moment, the very reason that the Or HaChaim gave about God taking his anger out on the stones and not the people is actually something that is prophetic. Because if you look at any ancient civilization today, what is left of that ancient civilization? Very interesting. What's left? Monuments. Whether they be pyramids or colosseums or ancient Greek temples, all the monuments, everything made out of stone remains, but the people whose culture developed those things have disappeared in history. Whereas with the Jewish people, there are no monuments. There are no great 7 wonders of the world left that was by the hands of the Israelites. In fact, nothing, virtually nothing but one wall, the Wailing Wall, besides that one miraculous wall that survived. We don't have monuments, but we have the people. We have the culture. We have the civilization. We have the wisdom and the knowledge. And that's what the Or HaChaim was saying, why God didn't let Moses come in the land. Sometimes when there is a negative consequence, it may not have to do with something we need to learn, but rather the other people that we are involved with. They could be family members, they could be spouses or ex-spouses, right? You always hear about the one spouse in the relationship that after the divorce, finally they're starting to grow. They're making all these positive changes in their life. It's the divorce that finally gave them the push forward to develop themselves in extraordinary ways, whereas within the relationship, they weren't moving an inch. Okay? So there are things we don't know, we don't see. We live in the tip of the iceberg reality. We only see the tip. We do not see everything that exists in that unseen part, that beneath the water, surface of the water. So we need to be more humble when we're feeling a necessity to impulsively judge. Okay? The second thing that the Torah gives us, this insight, is that you have to remember the Torah does actually give a reason why Moshe cannot go into the land of Israel. It's in Parshat Chukat, and the reason is when Moshe had to speak to a rock, he hit the rock, right? And so technically, he violated a commandment. Technically, he disobeyed the Lord, right? Technically. And not only is it a small technicality, there's actually in the commentaries, they give 10 different violations that Moshe had done, 10 possible violations, all in that story of speaking to the rock. So we know that technically there's a violation, but what I'm trying to suggest is sometimes in life, the reason given is not always the bigger reason. You understand? So, for example, if you outshine your boss in the company, you happen to be more knowledgeable, you have more vision, you know more than the person you're working for. Okay? Well, your presence is intimidating the person you're working for. And so he just wants you out. You are making him feel uncomfortable because you just outshine the master, right? So what he's going to do is try to find a violation, some technical violation to finally get you out of there. And that's kind of like what happened in the Torah. Like Moshe technically had some violations, but it wasn't the ultimate reason. Life is not always as black and white as we would like it to be. Life is more often than not multi-dimensional, and the reasons are not always as obvious or clear to us as we'd like them to be. But that changes when God gives us a vision atop the mountain. But before God brings Moses to the top of the mountain, Moses has a little request that is worth looking at. Moses asks God, can you help me to see mi'ever hayarden? Can you help me see beyond the Jordan, ela eretz hatova, to the good land? So what is going on here metaphorically is very, very profound, because it's really the plea of a depressed person, right? Okay, so when the mi'ever hayarden, that means beyond the Jordan. The word Jordan in Hebrew, Yarden, is related to the Hebrew word yerida, which means descent. Okay, Moses is asking, can I see over the descent, over the failures, the suffering, the tests, the challenges? Meaning the world is so full of challenge and suffering right now. There's so much pain in the world. Hashem, can you give me a vision to see over the Jordan, to see beyond the descending things that bring you down? Jordan means to bring you down. Please, God, just remind me of the good reasons we have to live today. I want to see a picture of the good land. Please show me a vision of the good land. Remind me of why we're doing it, why we're here to begin with, why I should continue at this point. Because right now I don't feel like continuing. Right now, all I see is the yerida. So please let me see mi'ever hayarden. And God says, okay, you have a good point, Moses. You have a good point. You want to once again see the good land. See the reasons why we're all here and why we should be motivated to continue. Not a problem. Ascend the mountain, and Moses does. And God has him look in all different directions. Now, in Hebrew, the word for Rosh HaPisga, it means like the headquarters of the trunk of the tree. Before you branch out into all the different directions, Moshe is ascended to the topmost place, to the source. And what does it mean he's able to see in 4 different directions? He's able to see the big picture. God gives him a big vision of the big picture of why everything happened. When he's looking in back of him, the pain of yesterday, the suffering, why everyone had to go through what they went through before they can be who they are today. He plays the tape forward for him into the future. God shows Moshe the entire picture. God also shows Moshe that even though you're not personally going to be going into the Holy Land, the Promised Land, look at the impact you have had on the generations. And he showed him 3,300 years of impact, influence. We're still studying Moses' teachings today. What more do you want? So sometimes in life we're at the end of the road. We're at the end of the journey. Remember, Moses is 120 years old. He's already outlived his entire generation. He's the only one around from his generation. He's outlived his elder sister Miriam and his elder brother Aaron. And he wants to understand the big picture. He wants to understand, where does he stand in it all? And God says, don't worry, Moses. Your deeds, your righteous deeds, they continue to bring merit to generations upon generations. So once Moshe sees the big picture, he feels comforted. And what is the next thing he does when he goes back down the mountain? He goes back to the people and he delivers the password of our faith, right? And that is the watchword of our faith. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And in this greater unity, meaning there is a unity, there is a greater thread of unity to the higher reality of how this world works and where it's going. There is a destination. There's a greater reality. And your job is ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha b'chol ma'odecha. Your job is to love and serve the Lord in the details of your everyday life. In your coming, in your going, in when you're sleeping, when you're on the journey, when you're raising children, when you wake up, when you go to sleep, the details of everyday life, bring that greater unity, bring that greater reality, because there is one, and bring it into the everyday details of your life. Okay, so until then, Hashem should bless you and I, that we should continue to make impact in our communities, to always question, the reasons why we do things, and look at the consequences, and always do a cheshbon nefesh, do an accounting of ourselves, but know that some of the big things in life that didn't work out are not always about you. They could be about other people. And if it is about you, it's for your greater soul development. So on this note, Hashem should bless us to lift our eyes to be able to see the same way he lifted Moses' eyes, and Moses was finally able to see the real emet, the real truth behind this facade of what we call the lower reality. And may we continue to always, when we're discouraged, see over the Jordan and into the good land, the good picture that God has for each and every one of us. Take care.